Somebody's hammering. Oh, there's Randall. Hello, Randall.
I hear the hammering going on.
Yeah.
Hi, Jen.
Hello, everybody. Oh, this is my favorite part. Especially when we get to really know each other. It's so cool.
Hey, Dick.
So here we are with Dick Schwartz. Amazing. Do you know how many people signed up for this? I was just telling Dick. 1,030 people signed up for this. It's amazing. And you know, so many of you, we've been talking about internal family systems, right? We're really, it comes up all the time in terms of how we're bringing in interoception and neuroception, the 𝗨𝗵𝗄𝗿 work. So it's just, I'm so excited. I'm very fired up. I'm like even a little nervous with all those people. So welcome, everybody. We're going to start, you know, in the Embodied Dialogue series that we've just named this thing I've been doing for, we've been doing this for, I don't know, Randall, it's been almost 2 years, I think now. And we always start with an embodied practice, right? We want to bring ourselves into our bodies so that we can really take in all of this wonderful stuff that Dick's going to share with us in a really deeper embodied way. So let's start. We're just going to do a little dive in and come back because we want to spend lots of time together. But so important to really welcome the body and take that pause to be able to go in. And what we're going to do is go in, connect in with a felt sense inside or something that's kind of forming, and then see if we can be curious about what part of ourselves is in this experience in the felt sense. All right. And so we'll just dip in and come back. And it's a place that you can come back to over and over again, right? How we find these parts of the selves deep in this somatic way. Okay, so settling yourself as we do, just removing things from your lap and just inviting yourself to begin to pause and find some kind of a place where your attention would like to settle. So that might be around the room, right? Just check and see. And then it might be okay to soften your gaze and to close your eyes if it feels all right. You don't have to. And slowly drop your awareness somewhere down into the center of your body. And then just noticing as we're all here together, if there's a place in your body that's really giving you some information. Some place that is saying hello. For me, it's my upper chest. And sometimes just putting a hand there feels really nice. And then just being curious about what's happening in there. Maybe there's some feelings around sharing this kind of community together. How we bring in parts of ourselves into the work that we do. And thoughts, maybe lots of thoughts. Maybe physical sensations that you feel there, tightness or a wobbly or a loosening. And then also memories, right? Memories are a very powerful pathway into the body and into different parts of ourselves. These internal family systems that we carry in our bodies. And maybe this part of you starts to come forward, the part that's listening now really closely. And just being curious with this part of you that's showing up here. How old is this part of you? And maybe this part has a question today for Dick. So Rashawn, you could mute for us. So we're just dipping in here, saying hello to the felt sense of this moment here in our felt sense polyvagal community with Dick Schwartz and all of you. And just put a little bookmark here. This is a place you can come back to and be really curious about. And just slowly feeling your feet on the floor. And your sit bones in the chair or the couch. And beginning to come back to the group and opening your eyes. And hello, everybody. Maybe, Rashawn, can you spotlight Dick and I for now, and then we can come back in a little bit. There we go. Hello, hello.
Hi, that was lovely.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so you and I actually met physically in real life in Oxford. It's amazing how we end up with these relationships where we don't actually meet people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
one conference.
yeah. So that was a place where we really started to dialogue a little bit. And I really wanted to continue that conversation because so many of the people that are interested through polyvagal training in internal family systems, it comes up all the time. So, you know, I've been reading a little bit about you, and I love that beginning story where you were working as a family therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's how I started too.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. And probably we're around the same. It was in the 1980s.
I'm a little older than you.
Yeah.
Oh, no, actually about then, yeah. I graduated with a PhD in 1980, yeah.
Yeah, well, you're a little older, not a lot. So the thing that really excited me too when I saw, you know, how you'd put this together was the way in which you described really listening to your clients without any kind of formal sort of interpretation of what was going on. And, you know, that excites me because that's how I learned too. And, you know, you talked about how it was through just listening that you heard people describing different parts.
Yeah, I was lucky in the sense that I had assiduously avoided studying intrapsychic theories because family therapy was a kind of pendulum swing away from psychoanalysis. So I didn't have a choice but to be curious, sort of in the Buddhist sense of the empty mind.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of go by what my clients were teaching me.
Yeah, yeah. And so how did you end up coming to where you are now? How did you end up creating and naming those different parts over time?
Yeah, I didn't name them so much as my clients named them.
Yeah, yeah.
And would talk about them. And at first, I made the mistake that everybody still makes, most people, which is to assume they are what they seem to be. So the critic is a kind of internalized parental voice. And in that case, I was working with kids who binged and purged. So the binging part was an out of control impulse. And so I would try to get my client to control them or fight with the critic. And they were getting worse, but I didn't know what else to do. So it took a while to get that they weren't what they seemed, that they actually have stories to tell about how they got forced into their extreme roles that they were in, and that they hated being in those roles, and that if they were released from the roles, they'd be entirely different. So that took about a year of just playing around and my clients getting worse and me getting desperate and trying something different. And so, so that's 40 years has been a long haul, and this is our 40-year anniversary. And at this point, we can safely say that there are no bad parts, that they all have valuable qualities. We're born with them, and they're forced out of their naturally valuable states into these extreme roles by trauma and by bad parenting, attachment injuries, and so on. And once they feel witnessed and retrieved from where they're stuck in the past, and they're willing to unload the extreme beliefs and emotions they carry that we call burdens, they'll transform into their naturally valuable states. So that's the first goal of IFS, is to help these parts, help liberate them from these roles so they can be who they were designed to be.
And that's interesting because it's in a way a different way of talking about it, but in terms of how we would see that, through the polyvagal world, would be that these parts are attempting to adapt to a situation that is traumatic, or it's overwhelming. And so the body has to go to these ways of being able to adapt. But that in essence, it's not a pathologizing way. Yeah. It's a way of coping with situations that are overwhelming, right?
Yeah, this is a bit of a different paradigm. And when we were in Oxford, that became even more clear to me, because that first plenary, was Bessel and Steve and who was the third person?
Peter Levine.
Peter, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was the body does this, and the body thinks this, and then the body acts this way. And I'm thinking, I don't really belong here, because it is such a different paradigm. So for me, it isn't the body that keeps the score. The parts keep the score, and they affect the body. And so it isn't the body that adapts, it's the parts adapt and they affect the body. So it's just a very different paradigm.
Well, but maybe we could say, because I think I sit there in the middle there, that it's the body and the parts. So it's neuroception in terms of the nervous system responding through the body, but it's interoception. It's the parts which are the part of it, the psychological part of us that experiences life, right? And that they work together. Is that
certainly the parts affect the body?
Yeah.
But for me, when I listen to your talk and I listen to Steve and Deb Dana, who's actually a well-trained IFS therapist, the starting point is different. So a lot of times the starting point is find something in the outside world that's going to soothe your vagal nerve. And for me, let's find the part first that's got your vagus nerve all wired up,
Mhm.
and let's help it. So it's just a different. I know you do both, but I think just in general, it's a different approach to it.
This is interesting, eh? Right where we are, what we're talking about is kind of like, where does it start?
Or where should you start as a therapist?
Or where should we start as a therapist?
Yeah.
But I think Dick, we do start with an issue that a person comes in with, right?
Right.
We don't start with what's going on in your body, but it would be more, a client would come in and say, I'm really freaked out because, I have to do this test and I can't do it because I keep beating myself up. So we would start there there's a couple of parts going on there, right?
Well, I certainly would, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. All right, then we're on the same page that way.
I think so. Yeah.
The issue for me, part of the issue for me, and what I learned the hard way, is prescriptions about trying to calm your body.
Yes.
There are often parts that don't want that, and they'll fight back. And if instead you start with those parts and get them on board, then you can much more easily calm the body. And
I agree, because those parts have learned to adapt in a way, right, that it's not safe to connect totally with your whole self.
Yeah.
So we got to go there first.
Yeah.
And I think how do you talk about that in terms of getting permission?
Yeah.
From those protector parts, right?
Protectors, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in your case with the test anxiety,
yeah,
we would say, okay, I hear there's a part that gets really, really anxious and makes it hard to take tests. And we can go to that part and help it.
Yeah.
But before we do, are there any other parts that don't want us to do that for any reason?
That's a great question.
Is there any fear about going there?
Yeah.
In doing that, we're soliciting the protectors that might have issues with the person not being anxious.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So
at what point do you shift to polyvagal?
Sorry?
At what point would you shift to polyvagal?
To felt sensing? Well, the thing about felt sensing is it carries both, right? It carries that feeling part in there, that critic part in there. I would go there, absolutely, because unless you've got everybody on board, that the parts feel safe enough, you're not going to get anywhere. It's going to be a power struggle, right?
Yeah. So for me, what you guys call felt sense, we call trailheads.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah, so
trailheads?
Yeah.
Oh, tell me more. I don't know that. Tell me, I'm curious.
So parts manifest in lots of different ways. And sometimes they manifest as a sensation in the body, which would be the felt sense, or an emotion, or a thought pattern, or an impulse, and so on.
Well, Dick, all of those things are the felt sense.
Right. So
all of
those things from our point of view are trailheads. So if somebody comes in and just like the meditation you led, they're not sure what they want to work with, I'll say, just go inside and notice what's happening in your body or your mind.
Yeah.
And just see what wants your attention. And we would have them focus on that.
Yeah.
That becomes, we call it a trailhead because when you're out hiking, there are trails and they have heads. And if you start at the head of the trail, it'll likely take you to a treasure of some kind.
Yeah, exactly. So I get that.
You stay with the emotion or sensation or whatever it is. And as you stay with it, it's going to take you to the part from which it's issuing.
Yes.
That's why we call them trailheads.
Yeah. And what I describe those trailheads, I call them avenues into the felt sense. So it's the same idea. It's an avenue in, right? You're looking for where is the person kind of sensing most that's happening? Where is it most alive, the issue?
Yeah,
and then follow that into the wholeness of it. Yeah.
it's pretty similar. I don't know if this would be a difference, but for me, every felt sense or every trailhead is coming from some part. So there
Yes.
isn't there isn't a felt sense that's separate from parts. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, it all goes together.
Okay. I mean, I had this debate with Jenlin years ago.
Did you?
You know,
I
we were
didn't know. I
both,
was going to ask you if you knew Jean.
I didn't know him well, but we were both in
Yes.
Chicago, and
Yes. Yeah.
you know, we had this internal focus, and so
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was a point when we got together and we had, you know, similar kind of conversation.
Oh,
But he
wow.
never, you know, the main debate we had was around whether parts were real or not. He never really could accept that. So
Mm.
I know there's a student of his, 𝗂𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗏, who
Yes.
has taken it in a parts direction, but
Yes.
Jen never did.
Yeah, Anne did. And I have too, for sure. Absolutely. But I think I'd shared with you my kind of history with parts came from working with multiplicity.
Mhm.
So that was like so extreme. And do you remember back then, right? We were talking a lot more than I think people do now
Yeah.
about working with multiplicity. And what I learned there,
Let's be clear in our terms. So
yeah,
we always work with multiplicity. If you work with parts, you're talking about what used to be called
DID.
multiple personality disorder. Yeah.
Yeah, dissociative identity. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which, you know, in some ways is what I'm up against, because the DID world sees them as pathological and as the product of trauma, these split off pieces of us and the goal is to eliminate them so that you can be one personality, which is really the opposite of what we're trying to do in some ways. So, but yes, that if you spent time with that population, it's hard to deny the fact that these are real and that they're full range personalities.
Absolutely. And yeah, they certainly are. Whenever you spend time, it's like, because lots of people deny the reality of it, right?
A lot of psychiatrists, yeah.
Yeah, but when you know it, you really know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, shall we do you want to go to some questions, or is there something? There's one other thing I wanted to raise with you, which is really interesting and I think probably quite controversial for lots of folks. And this is the idea of what you call self in IFS, that you don't do a lot of, grounding practices, or what we would say is kind of looking for ventral energy, that and correct me if I got this wrong, but that your real sense of it is that inside everybody, there is this pretty developed self, or at least enough of self that once you start to work with the person, it emerges and supports the person in their journey.
Yeah. This for me is the big contribution of IFS, in addition to the no bad parts idea. But yeah, I just stumbled onto this as I was actually trying to apply some family therapy to the inner world that I was trying to get to know. And in family therapy, if we're having two people talk to each other and a third interferes, we ask that person to step out, not sometimes out of the room, but at least give the other two the space to have a conversation.
Yeah.
As I'm having clients talk to parts, it becomes clear that other parts are interfering. So I would ask them to ask those parts to open some space and give us a break. And as they succeeded in doing that, it was like this other person popped out who had all these great qualities, which I've shortened into a list of 8 because they all begin with the letter C.
Yeah.
Which include calm and confidence and curiosity.
Curiosity, yeah.
And compassion
Yeah.
as well as courage, creativity, connectedness, and clarity.
Yeah.
So that person would then sort of take over the session because they would know how to relate to these parts in a healing way.
Yeah.
And if I was working with couples, for example, and I got them in that state, they would just start talking to each other in a healing way. And so when I would ask clients, what part of you is that? They'd say some version of, that's me, that's not a part, that's myself.
Yeah.
So I came to call that the self with a capital S. And now all these 40 years later, can pretty safely say that that is in everybody and can't be damaged and knows how to heal and is just beneath the surface of these parts, such that when they open space, it pops out. So, and that is a big deal. That really changes people's self-concept. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And in a way, it reminds me of Gendlin, who would say that the organism knows how to heal if you give it what it needs. It knows the right next step forward.
Yeah.
Just the way that the sunflower will turn to the sun if it's in the shade and it finds a little piece of sunlight.
Yeah.
That within each of us is this knowing, you know?
Yeah. I'm not sure. Was he a student of Rogers? I think he was.
Yeah, Gendlin was a student of Rogers. He was also a philosopher.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you at the University of Chicago at the same time? No.
No, I was at the University of Illinois at Chicago.
Okay.
He was at the University of Chicago.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, Rogers really had that approach.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
People sort of know how to heal themselves. This is a bit of a different technology that can advance that. So, and
even in multiple personality world, that we back then we called that the /, the inner self helper. So that idea that, and I like the way that you're saying, if you get these other parts out of the way, then it just emerges. There it is.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. Okay. Sorry?
You asked me how this is different from Hal and Sidra's work. You know voice dialogue?
I know the name, but I don't really know it, no.
Yeah, so they really did know parts. And they had something comparable to self, which I can't remember what they called it, but one of the big differences between this and many, many other approaches, including Jung, who also had a self in his perception too, in parts, is that self in IFS becomes a very active inner leader and outer leader, as opposed to a observing state that's very accepting and noticing, but not really an active leader. So that's a big difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Shall we go back to everybody? And because I think there's 84 things in the chat. So lots of people who want to connect with you and interact and ask questions and whatever. Rashawn, do you want to read out some of them? I can read them too if you want.
Sorry, I was on mute. Did you want me to remove the spotlight as well? Or...
I did. We did already.
Oh, you did already?
I think everybody can see me and.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think people wanted to ask about addiction, talk about addiction. So maybe that could be something.
Sure. Yeah.
So for me, I love 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗽's line, don't tell me about your addiction, tell me about your pain.
Yeah.
Because for me, we didn't get into this, but there is a bit of a map to the territory that I stumbled onto I'm a systems guy. So I'm trying to, as I'm hearing from clients about these parts, I'm trying to assemble a map to the territory. And the thing that leaped out immediately was the distinction between parts that other systems might call inner children that are before they're hurt are these lovely, playful, joyful, creative, loving parts of us who are also the most sensitive parts of us. So they're the ones who get hurt the most.
Yeah.
Once they do get hurt or terrified or shamed, then they have the power to overwhelm us and take us out. And so we kind of naturally lock them away in inner basements and try to stay away from them the rest of our life. And everybody around us tells us to do that too, because this is a rugged individualist culture that says, if you get hurt or traumatized, you just move on. You let it go. You don't look back.
Yeah.
So most all of us have a bunch of what I call exiled parts.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have a bunch of exiles, you feel more delicate. The world seems more dangerous. So other parts are forced into becoming protectors.
Yes.
Some of whom protect by managing your life so that nothing happens that might trigger the exiles. So, and they're the ones that are preemptive and they're on all the time. They're often the critics. They're parts that maybe take care of everybody but don't let you take care of yourself, and so on and so on. These we call managers that other systems call the ego a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Despite all that, the world has a way of triggering these exiles. And that is a big emergency because these flames of raw emotion burst out and something has to happen to deal with that emergency. So there's another set of parts who are on guard. And as soon as you get triggered, will go into action to get you higher than the flames or douse the flames with some substance or distract you until it burns itself out. So those we can call sometimes, some of those become what are called addictions or addictive parts. And so the cycle, for me, addiction is a 3-part process. So you have these raw exiles, and then you have what we call a firefighter addict part. It's a protector.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a manager who attacks you for the firefighter behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And that backfires in part because the attack goes right to the heart of the exile, who now carries even more shame, which means that the firefighter has to do its job even more.
Yeah. So it's a stuck loop.
Yeah, exactly. You get into that vicious cycle that,
Yeah.
we studied over and over in family therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you add to that the external voices of people who are upset with you for the addiction that just feeds that critic.
Yeah.
And it just escalates over time. And so one of the things I'm trying to bring to the addictions field is that these firefighters, these addict parts, are really heroes.
Yeah.
They really often save the person's life.
Yeah.
And they need to be appreciated for that rather than vilified and fought all the time. And
or tried to control, which never works anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, we're totally online.
Rather than trying to control them. So what we would do if I'm working with an addict is first get the critic off the person's back. So I'll start with that part. Because as long as it's in there, it's going to trigger the firefighter.
Yeah. So
we start with the critic. What are you afraid would happen if you didn't yell at him all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he would do the addiction. Okay, if we could fix the addiction, if we could get that part to not do that in a different way, would you have to yell at him all the time? No, but I don't think you can do that. Okay, would you give me a chance to prove that we can? All right. And so we get the addict part out for a while. I mean, the critic out for a while. Then we go to the addict part. What are you afraid would happen if you didn't get him high all the time? He'd feel all this pain. If we could heal the pain so it wasn't there, would you have to do this all the time? No, but I don't think you can do that. Mm-hmm. Would you give me a chance to prove that we can? Would you give us permission to go to that part that carries all that pain and shame so we can heal it? Yeah. And so we we go with permission to the exile.
Yeah.
And there's like a 4 or 5 step process for helping let go of the pain it carries, which includes getting it out of where it's stuck in the past and helping it feel witnessed about what happened when it got the pain. And then these parts are ready to what we call unburden their pain. And then we bring in the addict part to see it doesn't have to protect this one anymore. And also the critic to see that it doesn't have to manage things anymore. And then they transform into their naturally valuable states. So it's a very different approach to addiction.
Yes, and I think it's a different language in some ways, but everything you said warms my heart.
Right.
That, you know, addictions are adaptive responses in maladaptive environments. They're the ways that people stay alive. And I think we've got it upside down, you know, that, and then people get into these terrible power struggles around, you know, oh, I wasn't able to stop, or I went back again, or, and it's just completely, well, it's really like, I think such a dead end in therapy and in addiction treatment. So yeah, I love that. Other people, anybody want to talk to Dick? Come, raise your hand. Robert, come on, all you people. I know you love to talk. Liam, are you there? Hello, Liam. Peter, hello, Peter. Peter Steele, yeah. What's your question? Oh, we can't hear you. You're muted. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yeah.
Hello? Okay. Man, I first have to just say like how excited I am to get to talk to you all. I had no idea that this was going to be like a real Zoom, so I've got nervous parts that are kind of starting to shake because I didn't expect this opportunity.
Yeah, of course. Beautiful.
So I'm a student. I'm in my internship, and I guess I'm noticing this issue where counseling school doesn't actually teach you how to do counseling. And I feel like that's kind of a big issue because myself and so many others graduating a new therapist are going into the field without any real sense of like what to do. They put you in front of people with seriously difficult lives who are paying you money to try to help them. And you're just kind of there with like, you know, whatever little CBT skills that your school tried to give you. And so I just, in one part, I'm just like wanting to raise like a public lament in front of like what are honestly like just my heroes in the counseling field. I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but like a lot of us younger new counselors, you're really just kind of like rock stars in the field, and everyone's saying the word parts all the time. I don't know if any of us really know how to use the theory, but we're just saying parts a lot, and super appreciative of you all. So I guess really just like, do you have advice for us newbies in the field with a lot of heart? And like, I read all the books I can, I go to all these conferences I can, and still just so much unawareness in the counseling room of like, I don't want to just sit there and talk with people in a way that's not going to get into the deeper parts, right? But I don't necessarily know how to get a hold of those parts or really go into the body. And so I'm sorry if that's jumbled or confused. I'm honestly here at the gym. I didn't expect to be able to get on here. I'm just really happy I could. And I'm so thankful for you all. And thanks for taking my question.
Thanks, Peter. And lots of people in the chat are saying, great question. It is a great question. Vic, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I'd say, unfortunately, that's often the case. I know there are some, not just counseling programs, but MFT programs and so on that are becoming less that way, but that was the case when I graduated. And that's partly why I had to figure it all out myself, because I had to unlearn a lot of stuff that I learned at graduate school. And in fact, often as we train IFS practitioners, it's easier to train non-therapists because they don't have to unlearn so much. So yeah, it is a problem, and there are lots of resources about, I think both Polyvagal and Jenlin's work, as well as IFS, online, and it's free as far as I know. So yeah, give it a shot.
Yeah, I would say it was the same when I graduated too. And that really you have to do a lot more training afterwards. And I always suggest to people, pick the things that you're drawn to that have a community of people that speak to you, that you can co-regulate with, because the community is really, really important as support and stimulation. Yeah. So thank you for your question, Peter. John. Hello, John Turley.
Hello, Jen. Hello, Richard. Hello, everybody here. It's wonderful to see nearly 300 people here. How exciting. I had a question for you both, really. Is it possible, I've been noodling on this idea that sometimes I personally, my sort of ANS states, I might say, changes. Okay, everything will be perfectly okay, and then for no apparent reason, I can tell basically I've gone into dorsal or shut down or fold or whatever you want to call it. My skin's gone flat on my face and I won't make eye contact and I can't find any words and that kind of thing. And for no apparent reason. So I was wondering if what you both thought about whether it was possible that a part had started to emerge, had started to come to the fore, which I was consciously unaware of, maybe myself was unaware of, and that had created a dangerous internal system which had caused the ANS shift and the shutdown, or maybe I got angry instead or something. Could that be happening? Could it be a threat that's emerging in my internal landscape that's caused a shift in my autonomic nervous system?
I would say that's very likely, John, and that's what we would explore. If you came to me in that state, I would just have you focus on the body sensation like you described and get curious about it and ask why it's so wild up, or what's it afraid would happen if it didn't make you feel this. And in answering that question, and again, I would say just stay with the sensation and ask the question. Don't think of the answers, just wait and see what comes from your body that way. In answering that question, you would learn, I would say with 99% certainty from my point of view, that there is a part that either it could be an exile that just kind of took advantage and burst out and took over, or it could be a protector reacting to an exile. But we would find that out as you listened inside.
Yeah, and I think those of you who know my work, our work together, we would say the same thing. We would absolutely, there would be something that's happening that's causing a shift in your experiencing a threat, and it has a story to it. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for that. The idea that there could be an internal threat when everything external is okay, that's
that's a trigger. Right? That's what we would say is faulty neuroception, but it's real. Yeah.
What we would say is that even if everything seems fine, these exiles are stuck in terrible places in the past.
Yeah.
And so when they come up, they don't even know how old you are. They don't even know your environment's safe. And so until you get them out of where they're stuck, it's not going to change. It'll still keep happening.
Yeah, yeah. So we would speak directly to those parts in that age state that they're in and really honor them, right? It's as real and as fresh as if it was happening now. Yeah. Deborah.
Hi. Hi, Jan.
Hi, Deborah.
Really amazing to meet you and have this opportunity, but I have super nervous parts. So I'm going to try to organize my thoughts. What I came to session wondering about was, I did tons of processing when I realized I could ask a question today. And I just, from today's conversation about what are parts? I mean, I heard that question, and I hear my clients say that all the time. I'm really intellectual clients who are like, is this real? And all of that. I came to IFS from a deeply, deeply somatic perspective, and through dance, then experiential movement and exploring my psyche that way, and pretty lost, really, because I feel like I had to heal myself from the ballet world to emerge okay. And so I used experiential movement on my own kind of to do that. And when I finally found IFS, it was after 𝗁𝗁𝗄𝗵𝗵, after a bunch of other things. So I always had this language that was like the body, from the body work perspective and the somatic perspective, oh, the body does this, the body does that. But body up, I mean, to my intellectual brain, I was like, yeah, but there are nerves, and the mind, the brain interprets that, and there are and so I really had to unpack, like, what is this, what's a part, and what are these somatic feelings? And in IFS, I had a lot of, in my training was around 2009. My first introduction, like 2005. Trainings are different these days, but in my training, I felt like I had a lot of space, happily, luckily, from Kay Gardner and Marielle Pastor to really just be very, what might have looked like blended with my parts when I was really feeling them. But it was very somatic, and I learned the difference between being blended with a part and feeling the part's feelings, but also, maintaining an unblended. There was an unblended state that I could be in that was very different than when a very traumatized or exile took over and was just leading the show. So I feel really lucky that I had that space to explore from my deeply somatic way, when the language felt pretty intellectual from the mind down. And when I started with you, Jan, Jenlin's work just sort of validated more about sort of the way I did it, taking space with finding a body, finding the part in the body. But I feel like I blend, and I guess this is what I really want to ask both of you, or maybe, Dick. I've heard you talk about parts that have other parts, and parts that have a body. And I've definitely encountered clients who have parts. That's parts that have a body. I'm just wondering, because I'm so somatically oriented, like I think of the brain and all the ways we can feel a thought. I think of the whole brain, the whole nervous system as body. So like when I'm saying body and I'm locating a part and I'm guiding my clients to find the part in their perception, I mean, I guess I'm holding that a part is a whole like stance that is like physical and neurological and brain processing and of the body, because nerves and brain is body. But
Okay, Deborah, let me stop you there, because that's a great area to explore. So let's hear what Dick has to say.
yeah.
Can you get to the question, Deborah?
Yeah.
My specific question is, so when when parts have a body, like you've expressed, is that different than just a very somatic, like I can have a lot of different parts that have different feelings in my heart, but they're all using my body to express themselves in different ways. Like
but just get to the question. Get to the question.
So is the body, is it something different when you say hearts have bodies? Is that like a whole different thing than being somatically really embodied and living with the part, and I don't know, in contact with the part?
Okay, I think I understand. So yeah, you have a body, but as I got to know parts, they would talk about their bodies, which is different from your body.
Okay.
And that's really only relevant when it comes to the unburdening. So when we get to the point of asking a part if it's ready to unload the feelings and beliefs it carries, and it says yes, I've just found it very useful to say, ask the part where it carries all that in its body or on its body. And the part can tell you exactly where it carries it. And it isn't necessarily the same as your body.
Well,
And
that's
so,
interesting because the use of the pronoun changes everything. To say it's really asks the part a different question than if I'm saying to the client, where do you, because I've always done it, where do you carry that in your body?
I know. I used to do that too.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's much more efficient to ask the part where it carries it in its body, because parts can tell you exactly where they carry it, and it doesn't necessarily correspond to where the client feels it in their body. And so then when they unburden, you're actually certain that you're unloading the actual burden. So that's the only time we use that the part has a body. Let me go back though, because you brought up another thing that I'd be curious about, if this is the same or different with polyvagal. But so in many, many trauma therapies, there's a lot of fear of the overwhelm. There's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of talk of the window of tolerance, and how as client approaches that, you start to worry about that and you start to help them ground themselves and so on. It's different in IFS, and I think that's what you experienced with Kay Gardner, who has a background as a COMI therapist. But in IFS, as we go to these exiles, and the client's protectors are very frightened about the overwhelm, we'll reassure them that we can go there without the overwhelm taking the client out. And I'll make sure the client's in self with all those C word qualities before we have them go to the young hurting part. And as they go to it, as Deborah described, the client will look like they're overwhelmed. They'll be crying and yelling, but because the client is going from this place of self, if I were to ask, is this okay or is it too much? They would say it's okay. And so just say, keep going until the part feels fully witnessed. So the distinction would be the client is with the part and feeling its feelings, but it hasn't become the part.
Yes, this is totally how Gendlin would say that as well, that you are with the part, but you are not fully the part. And the key here, I think that you've said too, Dick, is that you make sure that self is present, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's it. I make sure self is present before engaging in that. And then you know that things are going to be okay.
But how do you make sure self is present? What's your technique for that?
I could ask the person, do you feel okay about going in here? Are you okay to do this? Or in focusing, we would say, are you too close or too distant from all of this to explore? So we would work with the person. I would make sure that I know I can feel the connection with them in self. Because you can feel it, right? You can see it in the person. And then we would be working with closeness and distance.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Lots of questions, and we have like 4 minutes or so. Let's go to Jennifer.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I just want to dovetail on what you just said about how do you know when a client's in self? And I would be really curious about what part would answer that question. And so just to fall back on what Dick is saying, following up on that, we're making sure that those C's are available and that the client is vocalizing that. But my question is this, I've always identified myself as an EMDR therapist working in complex trauma and doing a lot of humanitarian work. Since I have been IFS trained through level 1, currently a PA, very involved in the Institute, my question is, do you foresee IFS doing some humanitarian work, especially with what's going on in the Middle East, We're stabilizing in communities that have experienced school shootings. I'm so passionate about this model. I would love to use it in this way.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I'm trying to listen to guidance about what how to bring IFS to that whole crisis. I met last week with 150 IFS Israeli therapists and helped them with their parts, and so that they can then start helping people there. I've been collaborating with a guy named 𝗳𝗵𝗶𝗆 who does this kind of collective, works a lot with collective, what I call collective unburdening. And he's starting a project in Israel. So, and it's a trauma project now, and it's unclear exactly how that's going to play out, but yeah, I'm going to be involved in that as well. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what, how I can best be used.
There is a long-standing history of focusing people working in the Middle East and in Gaza. It's actually horrific to read the discussion list right now with people that are, well, we can't even find them anymore. But yeah, it's such an important thing to be paying attention to now. Kathleen?
Yeah, hi. So I'm kind of new to IFS. I wanted to ask how to work with the inner critic, because I hear a lot of coaches kind of trying to get rid of the inner critic. And especially I work with children and I hear their inner critic come up a lot. So I'd love to be able to support them in positive ways that honors their critic or doesn't try to get rid of it, but is more supportive.
Yeah, great question. And you're right. Most systems do try to fight with it or shut it out. And that's a huge mistake. So if I was working with you, Kathleen, and you, okay, focus on it, you know, felt sense, where do you find it in your body? And then how, the big question then is, how do you feel toward it? And most people would say, I hate it, or I'm afraid of it. And I would say, okay, that makes sense, but ask the parts who hate it or fear it to give us the space to just get to know it for a little while. And we would do that until you said, okay, I'm curious about it. And then I would say, ask it what it wants you to know about itself. And then a follow-up question is, ask it what it's afraid would happen if it didn't yell at you all the time. And in answering that question, it'll tell you how it's trying to protect you, because they always are. And most critics either are trying to bug you to behave, you know, so that you don't get hurt, or to achieve a lot so that you know, to get you to strive to be a big achiever. Or there's a whole set of critics who are desperately trying to keep you small and safe that way, and will yell at you and make you feel bad about yourself so that you don't shine, you don't put your head up. And so you learn which of those it is, which of those ways it's trying to protect you. And then you can honor it for trying to do that. And then we do the negotiation. If we could heal what you're protecting, would you have to yell at her all the time? No, but I don't think you can do that. Would you give me a chance to prove that we can? We didn't get into the steps toward healing at 𝗳𝗏, which you know, are various places on the internet, I think, and so on, or in my books. So,
Well, maybe you'll come back and we'll do some more. It's certainly lots of people are incredibly interested. And I love what you're saying there about the critic. And, you know, one of the most powerful questions I found to ask the critic is, what are you afraid of? And
that's what I just said, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they often just kind of, as soon as you can find that, right, that fearful place, then you've opened something up, right? Yeah, I think that appreciating the adaptive features of parts is so profound and so key. Well, we have to go. We still have lots of people in the chat and wanting to ask questions. Maybe we'll get Dick to come back again another time. Thank you so much. I know you're a very busy guy, and we really appreciate your coming and spending an hour with us.
Thank you, Jen. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm glad you
Thank you,
did.
Jen.
It's a real
Thank you,
honor
Rachel.
to have you, Dick.
welcome.
Okay. So bye,
Bye,
friends.
everybody.
everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Dick.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Bye.
Thank you.
Maybe we can
Thank
have
you,
another
Dick.
time where we can invite some people who've done IFS training and we can do some more conversation about it.
Sounds good. I gotta go. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.